Hello and welcome to the Wednesday Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are going to kind of circle back around to a subject that I have talked about. It's probably been a year or so since I've talked about it. If you dig way back into some of my archives, which by the way, this week we broke 700 video uploads here on YouTube. So we're super proud of that and super happy of that. So there's tons of content to dig through. But if you dig back through some of that, you'll find me talking about mixing your own audio from the stage. I had a follower ask me to talk about this because he was running into, he's a sound guy, owns a small company, and he's having problems with bands that are showing up only wanting to give him left, right, and then mix their own band from the stage while they're wearing in-ear monitors. I think that's a little problematic, so we're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to just go ahead and revisit the whole conversation and all of my advice that I give to guys that are mixing from the stage. I know not every band can afford a sound engineer. I get it, you know, especially if you're using small little stick rigs and stuff like that, and you're doing open air stuff. Maybe you're not in in-ear monitors, and you can actually hear front of house while you're mixing, or you got a buddy that is set out front and kind of say, hey, turn him up, turn him down. At least you have some kind of reference at that point. So I know not everyone can afford a sound engineer, and some guys have to mix from the stage. I do that occasionally on some of my band gigs, but I typically bring one of the CLP audio guys in and have them mix my band while I'm playing drums, because I just don't want the responsibility. And then I usually mix monitors from behind the drums on an iPad or something like that or whatever to make it easier on the front of house guy. So yeah, so that's kind of our thing today. We're gonna like dig deep. We're gonna talk about a bunch of controversial stuff, you know, when it comes to running sound on stage. We're gonna touch on some in-ear monitoring stuff. You don't want to miss a second of today's show. It is chock full of information. See you in a few minutes. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you know, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. Thank you for coming. As I said in the intro, today's topic is running your own sound from the stage. So, the only way you could even open, I'm going to try to lay a firm foundation and frame this correctly and then build up to where I want to go. So kind of bear with me, and I know for some of you impatient guys, that's like asking you to pull your own fingernails out. But I think my faithful followers stick around to the end. My numbers indicate that as well. So here we go with the foundation. If you're going to run sound from the stage, you have to be able to hear front of house to some degree, okay? So if, like, say you're in an acoustic duo, or you got a little trio band and you guys just got two wedges up on the stage, they're at a reasonable volume, everybody's playing at a reasonable volume, you know, maybe your guitar and bass is, or guitar and keyboard, depending on how your trio is set up, is running all direct without amps on stage, so you get some of that reference in your monitor, as well as hearing it in the house. One trick that I have used many, many times in this scenario that really worked well was putting my speakers on sticks at the upstage position behind me, the drummer, on each side. Is your house EQ might look more like a monitor EQ in that scenario, but not to a point to where it's going to sound horrible. Then everyone on stage has a reference. I've done that. I used to run an open mic night where we did that every week, and it actually worked out really well. Everybody could hear what they were doing, and it was fine. And we were kind of loud on stage in that band. Now, the only thing I was running through the system at that point was mainly just vocals, so we were getting vocal and acoustic guitar. If a keyboard was there, we were running that through there as well, all the direct input stuff. But in that open mic night scenario, the guitar player had an amp, the bass player had an amp. We didn't need any more of that in the room. And that worked really well. We were able to do what we needed to do as far as being able to hear ourselves. The guys that were singing in that house band were really good at projecting, so they didn't have any problems hearing themselves. And that worked out. Maybe that sounds foreign to you, and maybe you don't know how to ring out feedback in a system, because that's a skill that is becoming more and more rare in today's world, because honestly, everyone is so spoiled now with in-ear monitors. I'm running into a slew of young guys that just don't know how to ring out monitors. They don't know what that is. Maybe we'll do a video on that another time. I think I had threatened to do a video on that about a month ago and just got swamped with, peak season, gigging and all that kind of stuff, and haven't gotten back to it, but I promise you we will get back to it. So if you understand how to go to the EQ, find where the feedback is, pull that frequency down, make sure you're using a third octave EQ, 31 band EQ on your front of house or on your monitor wedge, or whatever you're trying to ring out at that point. If you can do that and you got that kind of ear for frequency and that skill set, then you'll probably find that the speakers behind you method actually works pretty well. As long as you're not trying to pound 120 dB of vocal, through those things, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're a guy that can't do that, or you have a full band, or you got a little more stage volume going on that kind of combats that and gets in the way of that, then you have to at least be able to reference front of house somehow. Okay? Now, I know guys that will mix, front of house from behind the drums with, 16 driver earbuds and custom molded earbuds, and swear to God that no one can mix their band better than them. Believe me, I've heard them say that right to my face, and that's really just not the case. You go out front, the vocals are buried, the kick drum's way up here because he can feel that behind the drums, and then everything else is just in limbo somewhere. Usually the guitar player in that band was loud, so you didn't have problems hearing him, but keyboards it was direct input, it would get buried. I mean, it just wasn't a good front of house mix because you need a guy out front. You just do. Now, if you're just playing in a little, O'Malley's Corner Sports Pub, with a 75 cap room or a 100 cap room, then, you could maybe get away with that, but then less is more in that scenario, Don't put everything in the sound system. If you're in a room that size, you don't really need drums in the mix. If you got subs, maybe a little kick drum, leave the rest of it go, man. You don't need the mic guitars if they have guitar amps on stage. This is just about managing front of house and stage volume ratio better. You know what I'm saying? Because what I do as a front of house engineer in that scenario is just exactly what I said, and I usually mix around the loudest guy on stage. If it's a guitar player, I mix around him. I let him just fly from his amp. I don't put him in front of house at all. I've had that with bass players. I've had it with drummers. Drummers are the hardest because they're really hard to get to dial back and to kind of, play to the room. I'm surprised and shocked all the time how many drummers don't know how to adjust their attack for the room they're playing in, or even adjust the type of sticks they're using or that sort of thing. And they all want to bellyache and complain about, you're robbing my feel and you're robbing my tone, my drum tone and all that. I'm a drummer, shut up, no one cares, okay? Play to the room, make the money, go get your rocks off on the next outdoor gig and pull out the double bass kit and play like, you're in Slayer or something. Like, I don't care, whatever. In those small rooms, in the context of today's video, we need the drummer to behave, okay? We really do, especially the snare drum. I've seen guys put towels over their snare drum to try and tame it down, use hot rods, and the sticks that are like the taped together dowel rods, little wooden dowel rods. That's what I prefer when I'm gonna pull back, is just to go to those, because it really brings the cymbal volume way down, It doesn't quite have as much attack on the riding hats as I want, but no one cares, and no one's complaining, okay? It just is what it is, The last gig I did with speakers behind me, I did an unplugged show of my classic rock band. We didn't mic the drums at all. We were in probably 150 cap room or something like that. Probably 100 people right directly, or 75 people right directly in front of the stage. So we just kind of played to the room, man. The room absolutely loved it. The owner, the bartender, a bartender come to me at the end of the night, was like, thank God the first band to play here where we're not screaming at the customers trying to hear drink orders. It is our responsibility to facilitate a warm, welcoming environment for people who will stay and both spend money in food and beverage. If you're knocking them out the back of the room with volume, then you can't do that, I have seen a bunch of guys trying to mix from the stage who struggle with that problem because they're pushing front of house way harder than they need to, because they're trying to hear front of house from behind front of house on the stage. This is a multi-layer, challenging conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just tell you, there's no quick, easy answers to this. You really need to have a feel for your system. You need to have a feel for your band. God forbid you got a guitar player or a keyboard player who's got, random volumes per patch. Like, the rhythm patch is here, their clean patch is here, and then their lead patch is here, and then they got two other distorted or, overdriven patches that are somewhere else. And as a front of house engineer, you're chasing that level around all night. Man, if you're on stage, it's more of a set it and forget it kind of mentality, I know some guys that do it pretty well. It's actually not too bad, It's definitely acceptable because, again, no one really cares, But I know other people who are horrible at it, and in that case, when people start caring, then there's usually something wrong, Like I always say, if you're doing your job right as a sound engineer, no one knows you're there. Except for the 3% of people who understand what it is and what it takes to get really good sound, or audio at said venue or said show. So yeah, man. So that's, a lot of the challenges. It always comes back. I feel like all we get done is talk about stage volume issues, in-ear monitors, all that kind of stuff. And I'll continue to talk about that the more you guys are asking me to talk about that. Yeah, man. So that's kind of the long and short of the basic foundational information you need to know about mixing from the stage. If you're on wedges and you're somebody who's wireless, who goes out front a lot, you can go out front during the first song and kind of reference things, go up, make some adjustments. If you got a band where everyone's patches are the same level except for the lead patch, you can pretty much set it and forget it, The bands that are the best bands I work with are the bands I have to do the least amount of manipulation of their sonic reference point to make it sound right. Let me say that again. The best bands that I mix and I have the privilege of working with are bands that are professionals on a level who have it at the source first. They have all their keyboard and guitar patches leveled out, except for maybe a lead patch. So you don't have to chase that around so much when you're trying to mix vocals, but you should be really focused on mixing vocals for the most part. Those guys that have all that stuff together, and I mean, they just got really good guitar tone before you even put a mic in front of it, or even if they're using like a Kemper or a Fractal or a Helix or something like that, and their guitar tone is really good right out of the box, then I'm not out there trying to recreate the wheel. I'm not out there trying to fatten up your guitar sound, or, it's too thin and bright, which is, man, a lot of you Helix guys got really thin and bright sounding guitar tones. I don't know what is causing that. I guess I've had one guy tell me that when he references it at home on his like little QSC powered speakers, it sounds fine, but then every time he gets on a bigger system, it always sounds thin. Well, if that's really the case, and that's the feedback you're getting and the reflections from your production team that you're getting, then overcompensate for that. Fatten up your guitar sound a little more than what is comfortable for you at home, and see how that translates when you go out. When I got guys that understand all that stuff, and I don't have to sit there and go through the Gettysburg Address of pro audio, to try and convince you to do what you should already know. All I got to do is just turn it on and make it louder. You know what I'm saying? It's sound reinforcement, not sound recreation. So many guys miss that, man. They just really do. And there's also a lot of guys that are genuinely trying to get it right. They just don't know how to get from point A to point B. I'm a drummer and I'm a great front of house engineer. I'm not a guitar tech. I'm not a bass tech. I'm not a keyboard tech. Now, I know enough about all those things to be dangerous and how to get you in the ballpark. But specifically with some of this direct input stuff that I'm hearing nowadays, I'm not the guy to ask, man. I'm not an expert on that. Go find a guitar player who has a really good tone coming through a big rig and go ask him, how he's got his Kemper set up. Or I can give you names of people who have really good guitar tone, who's using a Helix or who's using, a head rush or, whatever, What's the other one that I keep running into? I always want to say Tech 21, but that's more the bass stuff in my world anyways. I know they make other stuff. The Tone something, I don't know, Tone X, that's what it is. The Tone X. I've run into a couple of those. It sounded fabulous. Fabulous. It's just little, $200 or $300 pedal. It's not a big, satellites hooking up and you're talking to aliens on Pluto's third forest moon. It's like, it's just this little stomp box pedal, man, and it sounds like $1 million. So yeah, I've had some good luck with some Tone X stuff as well. I think another mistake that people make, guitar players specifically inside of the middle market, is they try to have too many rhythm sounds. You really only need 3 or 4 to cover, the landscape of, cover music. You need a really good clean, sound that's the same level as your overdriven patches. And you need about a 3 to 5 dB boost on your lead patch, so that when you hit a lead, bam, you stomp a button and it's there, If I need to turn it up a little more to get it to cut the way I want it to out front, I'll do that. But that way your lead never gets buried, And I'm shocked at the guys that don't understand those things. Understanding all those things make running sound from the stage so much easier. Because if you got it right at the source, then reinforcement is just Latin for making it louder. When we make it louder, then it becomes what you want it to be. You're not fighting yourself, or you got the front of house guy out there, trying to beam in tone from, the forest moon of Endor or something. Like, come on, dude, man. Ewoks don't even play guitar. You know what I'm saying? Like, get with it. So, moving on to the question that my follower had hit me up with just like yesterday was, hey, man, I'm running into a scenario where bands are showing up and only want to give me a left-right and will not allow us to mix them. Now, he's talking about on street festivals, multi-band outdoor stuff, bigger events. He's not talking about a 100-cap sports bar, or he's talking about a ballroom that seats 400 to 600 people, or a club that can get 600 or 800 people in there. He's talking about bigger venues where they need bigger production, hence that's what they hire him for. And then he's got bands that are rolling in there with, an all-inclusive package and a split snake, but they only want to give him left-right because they want to mix their own band from the stage and not have anyone out front. He's like, hey, dude, have you run into this? And how are you dealing with that? And my response was, well, the only guys that I have in my market that do that are bands that are bringing their own sound engineer. And that happens, a handful of times a year, 6-7 times a year, maybe, something like that. And most of those cats know me, and I have a rapport with them, and it's all good. There's even been times where they haven't been able to make it to their show, and the band has confidence in my skill set. Their sound guy has confidence in my skill set. He'll call me and say, hey, dude, why don't you just cover this event for me? And I do it, especially if it's a cattle call event, and they're kind of shoehorning these guys, as the headliner, on top of 5 other bands or something, and there's going to be combat audio all day. You know what I'm saying? So we have a mutual respect that way. I've never had anybody come in who wanted to give me just a left, right, and then mix their own band from the stage. Typically, in my little piece of the world, my reputation precedes me, and usually guys are kind of looking forward to me mixing them. And if they can get me on their mixer, then they're super happy because they'll save whatever I create in their mixer. And I'm basically selling that as a consultation kind of start scene sort of scenario. I can invoice it that way. So yeah, and that's just an extra charge on top of my walk-in fee and that sort of thing. So I don't really get guys that want to do that, you know. But I told him, I said, he says that it would be one thing if these guys were doing this and it was working, but unfortunately that's not the case. And these guys are trying to mix from the stage with custom molded in-ear monitor buds in their head. They have no reference of front of house, and it's horrible. And he said that he is trying to institute a new rule with his company that no one can mix their own band from the stage anymore, because it's, you know, and I understand where he's coming from, it's making him look bad. Because when it sounds bad out front, everyone always looks at the sound guy. That's when everyone notices you. And that's when something has gone wrong. You know what I mean? And I told him if it was me, I'm getting paid to provide your racks and stacks in that situation. If they want to mix from the stage and it's horrible, let them have it. You know, if people come to me and want to complain about how horrible it is, I will look them right in the eye and say the band insisted on mixing themselves from the stage instead of allowing me to mix them out front. This is their mix. This is only my equipment. This is their mix. This is what they thought they could do it better than me, the guy who actually owns the sound system and mixes 180 and 200 shows a year on it. But hey, what do I know? You know what I'm saying? It is whatever it is, man. Get paid, shut up, stay out of the way, let it suck until, you know, the cows come home. I don't care in that situation. You can't fix stupid. And standing there trying to argue with someone is a lost cause, man. You arguing with them is not going to make them suddenly become intelligent and become wise as to what is going on with their situation. Especially if they have some sort of superiority complex and think they know more than you about your sound system. That always cracks me up. Stupid is just stupid, dude. You know, if you're a moron, I don't know what to tell you, man. You know, if that's how, maybe your fans are just used to it, hearing it that way. Dude, I don't care. I'm getting paid. As long as whatever they're doing doesn't affect my systems in a negative way, as far as, you know, blowing up speakers or overdriving the mixer or the amp or, you know, whatever, you know. As long as that's not the case, I don't care, man. It's not my circus, not my monkey. I'm not going to waste a bit of energy trying to argue with you. If you want to be an idiot, you're welcome to be an idiot, and I'll stand there and let you be an idiot. It's just the way the world works. No one, I don't care who you are or how badass you think you are, no one can mix their front of house mix with an in-ear mix custom molded to their ear canals, cutting 30 to 35 dB of stage volume out of the way. Even if you have room mics up, that is coloring and changing the natural response of the room by the time it gets to your ears. Usually you mix way too loud. Usually the vocals are way too loud or not loud enough. Especially if the guy running the mix is the guitar player or the bass player. Guess what's going to be loudest in the mix? Or drummer. No, a whole bunch of drummers that do this. Guess what's going to be loudest in the mix? It's going to be their instrument. Because that's just how they're naturally going to try and mix from the stage. They want to be heard, in their mind, at least at the same volume as the vocals. And that's not typically how this works. This typically works in a manner to where vocals are here and the band is here. You know, it's just the way it is. It's the way it should be. The only time I will level that out is if the vocalist is struggling, like if they're having allergy issues or they have a cold, or they're just having a bad night where they're singing out of key half the night. I'll bring the vocals down and tuck it right in around the band and just let it be there, especially with cover music. If you're playing highly recognizable cover music, once you get into the song, everybody's kind of got the melody in their head anyways. It's like the old analogy of you can take a guy with a drumstick and a hand cymbal and put him at the end of a football field, and he can pretend to hit that cymbal, and 4 out of 5 people will swear they heard that cymbal hit, even though the guy never touched the cymbal. Especially if he hits it 2 or 3 times at first, stops, waits 2 or 3 seconds, and then fake hits. Oh yeah, that might get 5 out of 5 guys fooled. So you can play some of that to your advantage. This is some of the veteran wizardry that we pull out of our little bag of tricks from time to time. I heard the house guy at, I forget where it was. It might have been NBC or CBS. It was one of the guys that was mixing the Super Bowl, football game. And he was telling the halftime show band's engineer that, hey, look, the live feed is a little different than what it is in the stadium. I would tuck those vocals down into the band a little bit more so it will feel more natural to the audience at home. And he was saying, the guys that do that usually have a really nice mix in people's living rooms. The guys that are still mixing with the vocals way up, everybody at home's kind of scratching their head like, why are the vocals so loud and the band is just kind of buried? Or here's the Achilles heel of that situation, and we see this all the time in live streams of churches. Live stream has brought truth to the table in a way that most of us were uncomfortable with ever having to accept. You can't hide bad singing in that scenario. And if you got the vocals plowed way up, because that's how you want it in the stadium, not understanding that, hey, you probably should pull that back because the live feed needs to be dealt with in a different manner. I was surprised that they didn't have another engineer in between the halftime band and the network guy mixing audio to video so that he is only hearing the live stream or the live feed, and he could adjust that stuff accordingly that way. But from what this guy was saying, that wasn't the case. They were getting like a matrix send or something off of whatever they were mixing in the stadium, and we all know that most matrix sends are just another output from left-right aux. So yeah, so there's something to be said for that when you're trying to mix front of house from the stage. At the very least, have a buddy out front or something, or your teenage kid or somebody who can just at least ride faders out front. Like, okay, you're a control freak and you can't let anybody mix your band. I get it. But you can go and preset all the EQs, compressors, all the important stuff, the effects, and set it and forget it there, and then at least have somebody adjusting the levels so that the levels are coming across out front the way they should. Of course, that's a loaded question too, because it's like, hey, what if the guy doesn't understand how things should be? Well, you're going to have to vet that. I know a bunch of older cats that have been big fans of music their entire life that are approaching retirement and deciding to get into live audio as a hobby in their retirement because they've always wanted to do that, but they didn't have a day job that would allot them the time to do that. Those guys are always looking for gigs like that. They're always looking for gigs where they can just ride front of house and learn more and pal around with the band and be part of all the road antics that happen when we're out here doing what we do. So that's kind of that, dude. Don't be a jerk to your sound guy. I mean, this follower who is sending me this message, he's just genuinely trying to make the band sound the best they can sound out front and knows that he can do a better job than they can. In one case, he said that the band didn't have a splitter, so he pulled his splitter out of the truck. I always carry a splitter with me. I carry a 24 in the trailer and a 32 in the box truck to make this doable, to make this happen. And they refused to do that and refused to let him mix out front, and it was pretty rough. Pretty rough. So there you go. That is mixing your own band on stage 101. You know, there's a lot of in-ear monitor stuff we could talk about in that scenario. I got guys that say, yeah, but I only run one ear out so I can hear, you know, part of front of house. Okay, well, the problem with that is when you take one of those sealed buds out of your ears, you have to push the other bud in a neighborhood of like 6 to 10 dB more to be able to hear yourself as much as what you do when you have yourself sealed in. That can give you hearing damage. That can really hurt your ears. And with some of these new modern earbuds that are multi-driver, my in-ear custom molded are Alien Ear G16s. I love those buds. They are my go-to buds. But they got 4 drivers, 2 mid and 2 high in each ear. And let me tell you something, brother, they get loud. I mean loud. You got to be really careful, you know, with those buds. You can hurt yourself. So in the process of trying to hear front of house and your mix, you're probably not doing yourself any favors, specifically your hearing. So kind of think about that. And then to kind of just bookend the whole video, I know I already hit you once with please subscribe and that kind of jazz. But look, guys, we just broke 700 video uploads. We're super happy about that. We just broke 4,000 subscribers. Those aren't big numbers on the surface. Like over on Facebook, I'm getting like 2.5 million views per month and got over 10,000 followers there. YouTube is a little harder not to crack. Honestly, I think because there's just more people on Facebook, and I think people spend more time on Facebook than they do YouTube. At least it seems that way. But if you could please, 48% of you guys, according to my market information, are not subscribed to the channel. Would you please subscribe to the channel? And if you really dig what I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy content, and this information blesses you and it helps you, I'm gonna ask you to really just think about becoming a paid supporter of the YouTube channel. For about the price of a cup of coffee, like I said earlier in the video, you can be an insider. And insider, like this week's insider video is gonna be, we're gonna do a vlog section of it where I'm just gonna tell you what's going on in my world and with COP Audio and Staging right now. We've been having some Wi-Fi challenges here lately. We just did a video last week on the member side about revamping our whole Wi-Fi system. We're gonna, you know, give an update on how all that has worked out. And that video that I'm gonna make for the members this week will never go public. It just won't. You know, I'm trying to create value there so that you guys can see some value in becoming a member and not just feel like you're throwing some money at me. The other thing is too, when you're a member, a paid member, and you comment over on that side, I'm real quick to try and respond to those comments the best I can. Listen guys, I am getting no less than probably, I don't know, 300 to 500 comments a day that I'm genuinely trying to at least acknowledge or respond to or something like that. It's hard, man. It's hard. It's the Grumpy Sound Guy has grown to a place where it's a lot to try to keep up with. It really genuinely is. And I'm doing the best I can do is what I'm saying. But if you're a member, then you immediately rise and bubble right to the surface of that stuff. So if there's something you want me to talk about specifically, if you want to just contact me and ask me some questions or maybe kick back and chew the fat a little bit, drop a comment in the member video. I know you're a member. I'll give you my cell phone number and we can sit and chat for 30 minutes on the phone. You know, like it's all good. I love talking to other guys in the industry. I've been very, very blessed with this content and the connections that we're starting to make. We got a lot of really cool things up our sleeve that I can't talk about right now, but there's some really super cool stuff coming down the pike for the Grumpy Sound Guy, specifically over the winter months. You know, so yeah, man, think about becoming a paid supporter of this content on YouTube. Those guys really are my inspiration because I honor their $5 a month or whatever it is, $3.99 a month. There's a couple different packages there you can buy. I really try to honor that to the best of my ability. I know your money is hard to come by, because my money is hard to come by. And I financially support the YouTube channels that I dig. So I'm not a hypocrite in that scenario. I'm doing exactly what I'm asking you to do for the channels that I love. So yeah, man, help a brother out, all right? Try to stay cool in this weather. It's like, it's hotter than, you know, it's hotter than like, who was like one of my favorite 90s female, I think in one of the shorts today, I said it was hotter than Pam Anderson on Baywatch, but I wanted to use something else. Maybe Jennifer Aniston during the Fringe years. How's that? That's how hot it's been. So I know everyone's melting. I know we got insects this big now that are trying to like grapple us and carry us back to their nest or to their home planet, whatever is going on with that. I have not seen spiders and just like these giant horseflies that I don't even know where they come from, dude. I don't know. Maybe it's like, you know, the third seal of the apocalypse or something that's happening, but everything's growing way too much. I'm mowing my lawn 38 times a week now. It's, you know, I mowed it yesterday, probably needs mowed again right now. Baling hay every time I mow. It's just insane. So, love you guys. I'll see you next week.